In this next session, Director of Customer Success Jared Center is going to be spending some time with Tracy Pierce. Tracy, from the healthcare category, is the SVP of Learning and Development and Strategic Outreach at CommonSpirit Health. Tracy has spent a tremendous amount of time in the healthcare category. I'm very interested to hear this conversation exploring learning and development's role in what's taking place with the future of work. Please welcome Jared Center and Tracy Pierce.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Excited to be here for another one-on-one session for Compete, a live event on the future of work. For this session today, I'm here with Tracy Pierce. Tracy, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my privilege. Thank you.
Absolutely. So Tracy, for those of you who don't know, is a Senior Vice President of Learning and Organizational Development and HR Strategic Outreach at CommonSpirit Health, which is a newly formed system as of last year between Dignity Health and Catholic Health Initiatives, creating a new nonprofit Catholic health system that employs more than 150,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, Tracy, and has 700 plus care sites, over 140 hospitals, is a massive network and really helps a lot of people. So I think that your perspective today is going to be great, and really excited to dive in. And if you don't mind, Tracy, I know I talked a little bit about the organization you work for, but would love to learn a little bit more about you, your background, and what you focused on today.
Oh, thank you. I feel really privileged every day when I wake up and can say that I'm part of one of the largest mission-based nonprofits in the country. CommonSpirit Health always looks to serve the underserved. We offer healthcare regardless of one's ability to pay. And when we look at what we're facing right now with the pandemic, more now than ever, it's really important that all of those community, urban and suburban hospitals are, receiving the support that they need. But regardless of what role I play as a leader in the learning and development role within CommonSpirit Health, it's nothing compared to the first responders that kind of put themselves in harm's way every day to often care for somebody that they have no relationship with. So in the last few months, it's given me a whole new perspective about the quality of people, frankly, and the work that we do.
Absolutely. And really excited for this conversation, and because I think that, we work with and have talked to a number of healthcare systems, and obviously they all do great work. And I think your perspective is unique in that it is a nonprofit and mission-based, which I think offers a unique perspective. So Tracy, when you think about the future of work, I feel like it's almost become kind of like this buzz phrase, right? And one of the reasons we're doing this event is to try to define it a little bit. When you think of that phrase, what does it mean to you, and why do you think it's important that we talk about it?
Well, for us, it really has forced us to look at and take on board things we're capable of delivering. We pride ourselves that when a new employee joins the team, that they have and get an onboarding that's high touch, really focuses on the mission, the organization, the tours. All of a sudden you face a pandemic where your onboarding is all occurring remotely. So, how do you do something like that and still make it high touch? You still make sure tools and equipment are where they're supposed to be. And yet a big portion of those people onboarding are caregivers. So they are going to be on the front line. So there's this balance between doing things remotely and having the reality of people not being remote, being on the front line and interacting with the sick and the needy. So it's really been an excellent learning. But I would be lying if I didn't tell you. In many cases, we're just kind of trying things and making sure that we're tracking, so we have a baseline ability to measure. Did that work? Why not? Did that work? Let's do it again. So really trying to be very clear about what we did that was different. How was it different? And so we can clearly learn going forward. We need more of this and less of this, and this can wait. Those are the things.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the the tracking part of it is so important, because just trying things willy-nilly but not having a system like that to track it and actually evaluate it means that you won't be able to replicate it in the future if it's something that works, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess in your role today, what are some of the things you talked about onboarding as being one example? What are some other examples, Tracy, of things that you and your role and your team are working on today? And obviously you're doing a little bit of reacting in the moment, of course, not as much time for advanced planning, but of course you need to think ahead a little bit. What are some of the other things your team is kind of focused on right now?
Well, the team originally is a pretty robust team focused on a brick and mortar approach, right? We have cohorts, we have instructor led. Now we're moving to, virtual interactions. And how do you make those interactions using technology like we're doing today, the Zooms, the Googles, the WebExes of the world? How do you use those technologies and in such a way that you can still have breakout sessions, still have that interaction, still have that learning from each other, experiential training, not in a classroom format? That's something you can appreciate when you're a nonprofit. You don't spend a lot of money on technology, right?
Right.
So all of a sudden we're learning very quickly what technology is a must-have. What do we have to work on to at least be able to launch or have the dialogue like we're having today, Jared? It's not that it's challenging. It's just not a question you ever asked. When you go to a conference room, it's like, does the video work? Right? That's the biggest challenge. The video start, right? So, these are the things, and to still have that ability to connect and have a conversation when the person might be sitting in their home office. So all of our curriculums are shifting from being that brick and mortar classroom to 80%, 90% online, right? The only things that are really in this time that are in person are the things that are standardized to audits, the clinical audits, the things that you actually have to go show people in any service area are the only things that we're actually doing in person. So we've moved 180 to how we operate, and that's been a lot of days of laughter.
Yes, you know what, that's the mindset and that's the attitude you have to have when things are shifting daily. And you talked about a lot of like virtual work from your seat, and having been in an HR type role for most of your career, seeing this shift. And let's be honest, the remote work isn't something that's brand new, right? No. If things were kind of going in that direction anyway. Of course, in a healthcare system, like you said, traditionally brick and mortar. So as you've seen, and we've been forced to be in this remote work environment over the past few months, what are some of the things that you've been hearing from your team, from your employees, from your peers? What are some of the things that you like about remote work, or that you're seeing that are helpful for the future of work? And then what are some of the things that you think we really need to continue to work on?
So I think one of the things that as I kind of alluded, a sense of humor goes a long way. But I think one of the things that has been most shocking is that people realize they can do it, that you actually can have a meaningful conversation, make decisions, and deliver good work while working remotely. I won't say it's been shocking, but it has at best been surprising for a lot of people that you can actually do this and do it particularly well. I think what you get out of the employee, depending on what time or era you're from, this idea that the leadership has to see their team members in front of their office is kind of, in the past. It's like the reality of it isn't even about trusting your employees. It is about you probably getting more work because, frankly, I only have to look good from the waist up. If I go jog in and then jump onto a call, nobody really knows. And so the workday, I think, is you get a lot more out of any given workday. For those people that are the creatives, and I'm very lucky, I have a lot of creatives, they've done a lot of team building and activities using the system. But on the flip side, I think the ability to walk down the hall, have an idea and say, hey, Jared, let's go have lunch. People miss that because at the end of the day, humans, we are but clannish, right? We kind of, we like to go off into, so things like that. I don't know long-term how you can replace the ability to just break bread and have a chat that wasn't expected, that we do a lot of group think out of that, you know?
Yeah.
Those are the other things.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting to think about when we talk about the future of work too is the generation that's coming up and is entering the workforce currently. So when you talk about, walking down the hall and asking me to, let's go grab a bite for lunch, the current generation that's coming into the workforce, that isn't something that they either are used to or maybe even comfortable with, right? In terms of face-to-face interaction, which I think is interesting. But we know how important that is, of course, right? In building culture, building teamwork. And so when you think, Tracy, about this next generation entering the workforce, what do you think has to change, if anything, to better prepare them for their first 5 to 10 years, out of school, entering the workforce where things are shifting so quickly? What do you think that we need to do to kind of like better prepare this next generation?
Well, I think in many ways this next generation has a head start on us, first of all, because they're very curious. They'll ask questions that in previous generations, you kind of raised your hand, and if you got the nod to ask a question, you would ask it. Whereas this generation just asks question. There's no stupid question. They have that down. But when you talk about building culture, culture is built by examples, right? You see how, your leadership, your leaders of your family. I mean, let's just be honest. Most of us learned how to behave by watching how our elders behaved. So
100%.
It's very difficult to do that on a camera. So the ability to have circles of communities of learning, I think, is going to have to be something that we all look to. And that circle or community may not be happening in the workplace. Maybe it's happening in a coffee shop or in a workspace. Coming from the Bay Area, you would go to any given coffee shop, and if you are sitting at the right table, you could learn a lot, about a variation of subjects, right? So I think that's what you're going to see, is a lot more community works rather than, these kind of holistic themes with a broad brush. The world's been global for a long time, so you are only a call away. So the ability to have conversations with Europe and Asia, that's been done via technology for a very, very long time, right? But there's always been that meeting for those important events that just traveling is not going to be the same. I don't think traveling is going to be the same. And I think with the most recent, unfortunately, spike in the age group of who's getting this particular pandemic, it shows that no one is immune. It really isn't about you're of this age with this underlying condition. It really is about if you're not protecting yourself, and you too could get something. So then traveling becomes something that you must do, not necessarily that people want to do anymore. So I think all of those things put together in this generation, they're going to have to address those, and probably address it in small bites as opposed to a global policy. But if there's any group that has a head start, it's this group, because they are very, very comfortable with technology, right? Very comfortable with technology.
Absolutely. No, you're right. I think that's you can't argue that one. And it's going to be really interesting to see, because I think, like you said, that combination of skills that they have, yes, like some things will be different, but there are definitely advantages there for sure. Right. And speaking of that generation, you mentioned that the example that they're learning from is, let's say, their household or their parents that are modeling for them. And then, of course, in their first, whether it's 18, 21 years, most of them are in school.
Right.
Before they would start working at CommonSpirit Health, for example. Right. What role do you think that our educational system plays, Tracy, in preparing kind of that generation?
Well, I think one of the things we've really noted is when you look at a curriculum, for most of us who attended a 4-year college, you have these kind of forming courses, right, before you get into your major. I think that's going to almost be flipped, where you have a lot more specifics in learning and a lot less general. That's why I think the online education has seen such a spike, because they will take into consideration how you work, your ability to attend an in-class versus online. And so I suspect, and obviously I don't know, but I suspect you're going to see an increase with online education, as opposed to going to a 4-year school where you live in a dorm and these types of things, which is really sad because, those were the best years of my life. I would have given them up.
Yeah. I know. I've said that I feel so bad for it and grateful that I have that college experience. It's one of the many unfortunate things, that are happening right now. And we'll learn from it, but no, it was fun for sure. Great. Well, we have a couple minutes left, and I had one more question before I wanted to kind of open the floor to you, for anything you wanted to add that we haven't talked about. But if you, let's say we're on a Zoom call like this, Tracy, and you were running the call, and you had HR leaders, the top 200 HR leaders from the top companies across the globe on the call, and you were talking about preparing for the future of work, making sure we're ready, and you had the floor. What would you say? What would be your message to those top 200 HR leaders across the globe in terms of how their role and the impact that they can have on the future of work? What would your message be?
Wow, that's a great question. Throughout my career, I've always thought of HR as an enabler rather than a policing department. And I think depending on what organization you belong to, your role often is the policing department. I think more now than ever, HR has to move and be very much at the forefront of enabling an organization to work with this transition, right? So how do we encourage leaders to learn and adapt their skills to this virtual workforce? How do you learn about to do team building, to make sure that a new employee has a buddy? I mean, what are the things that you're going to stop doing versus start doing? And HR is driving that to get the right people on the proverbial bus, so to speak. I see that more than ever when I look at the kind of courses and the tools that we've offered in the last 5 months. It really is a lot around how do you still lead and lead with courage in some cases, but lead with enthusiasm and motivation in all cases during this time, right? Because we're working, but we still have a lot of unanswered questions about what does all this mean, right? So it's the balance between, you got to care about what's going on in the world, but maybe your best ability to contribute to that is to really do a great onboarding where somebody feels like, now I can get to work quicker, faster, so I can help deliver some results. That's what comes to mind. That's the kind of question you got to give me up, for me to really think about. But off the top of my head, that's what comes to mind.
That was I thought that was a pretty good first run at it. I'll give you maybe I'll round up the top 200 HR leaders for real, and then we can
ask that question. Yeah, because I'm sure I've got a lot of learning to do from them. So.
That was, and to be honest, Tracy, I think what you just said is also a key when we think about the future of work and what's changing. I think making sure that no matter where we are, who we are, that we all have a lot to learn from each other.
Right.
And that kind of continuous improvement mindset and lifelong learning mindset is I think gonna take us far for sure.
Right. There's a dual message. It's a lifelong learning, and there's hope. We always you gotta start every day with hope. And a wicked sense of humor. That will get you, those elements will get you far.
There you go. Well, I think those were all the questions that I had, Tracy. Is there anything that you want to say to our attendees that we haven't covered? You have the floor.
Well, I'm just very excited about the whole fact that the conference is happening. So I look forward to getting a lot of emails and a lot of exchanges based on what the learning is, because with the list and the groups of people that I've seen that are scheduled to attend, I think this is going to be really a great opportunity for us to look at learn from each other to the point we just discussed. I think it's all about learning from each other. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate this.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tracy. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.